Hey, in this video I'm going to show you how to strip and cut a wire because I got a wire on my board I'm not very happy with. And then we're going to build a circuit with a resistor and an LED, and it's going to light up. And we're going to use that as a logic probe later on in some of the other tasks that we do. Okay, so during the last video I showed how to put power onto this board. If you haven't done that yet, you'll want to watch that video. But in that, I have this blue wire that I'm really not very happy with. It's too long, right? So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to strip this wire and make it a little bit shorter. So first I'm going to take one end out. And how long do I wish this thing was? Well, I really wish it was about, wish it was about that long. So I'm going to cut it about right here, and then I'm going to strip the end off of it. Okay, so I got kind of my spot on there. Now this is a pair of wire strippers. This is not a great pair of wire strippers. This is kind of your base model, no frills attached wire strippers. The reason that I have these in the lab kit is because no matter where you go, you're going to find these in the toolkit. Like if anybody has wire strippers, they're going to have some that are kind of like this, right? They may have a nice pair too, but they guarantee they're going to have these. So as opposed to like showing you how to only use the nice ones and getting dependent on those, this is kind of like learning how to drive a standard in the car. You're always going to be in good shape if you know how to use these. Now it's got two parts. One, first of all, it's kind of springy, so you can open and close it. It's nice. And then you see that this part close into the fulcrum here is the wire cutter. So this little part close in is cuts. And then the part here, more up at the top, you see when I close it, there's a hole there. And that hole, someone has set it to be exactly the right diameter of the wire that we're using. Now we always use the same wire in here. It's 22 gauge, right? So somebody has taken the time to adjust this nut so the thing closes exactly right to strip 22 gauge wire. If you run upon a pair of wire strippers in the wild, they're not going to be set right, but that's okay. With a screwdriver and a little bit of patience, 2 minutes, you're going to be able to set them right. Basically what you want to do is you want to set these to where when it closes, the hole is just big enough for the wire to fit through, but it cuts all the way through the insulation on the wire. Okay, so I've got my spot down here where I wanted to cut it. I'm going to put that wire close down to the fulcrum, close it up, and boom, cut it, right? Also, I was a little bit unhappy with how long this end of the wire is, so I'm going to cut a little bit of that off too. You may remember that it was sticking out too far from the end of the board. Wow, that didn't cut. It just kind of bent it. Okay, use a little more force on it, and there you go. All right, so now I'm going to strip this end of the wire. So I'm going to put it in the top part. You see that the wire is sticking through the top part of it now, and I'm going to clamp down. Now I hope the person set this right. I've put it far enough to where it's sticking out about as far as it needs to. And you're like, well, how far does it need to stick out? It needs to stick out about that long. That's how long the holes are in our wire, how deep the holes are in our wire. So that's about how long you're going to need it to be. Now what happens if you cut it too short? Strip a little more. What happens if you cut it too long? Then snip a little bit off the end. It's okay. You're not going to be good at this at first. It's all right. The first step at being good at something is being awful at it. So if you're not great at it at first, don't worry. Okay, so I'm going to clamp down on this, and if people have set it right, then it's going to cut through the insulation, but it's not going to cut through the wire. And then I got to grab it and yank the, see, I yanked it, but it didn't cut through the insulation all the way. So I'm yanking this thing out, and I'm basically pulling the end of that insulation off. It didn't cut all the way through. You see, it cut some of it, but it didn't cut all the way through. See if I can get to focus on that. So I got to go back for another go at it. Okay, there you go. And let me kind of get this cleaned up a little bit. Okay, so it took the end of the wire off, which is great. And I think this is probably a little bit too long, so I'm going to cut it off. Now you might say, how would I know if it's too long? Well, if you plug it into the circuit board and there's wire sticking out the top that doesn't have any insulation on it, then that's too long, right? We don't want any exposed metal out there. Okay, now I think it's probably about right. Oh, good, good. So I'll reinstall it. Just a second. Okay, I'm going to reinstall this wire, and I hope it's the right length now. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, now you can see that the wire's a more appropriate length.